Nation. The hobby is the people. Weekly news and interviews. It's your number one source. Sports Card Nation. The hobby is the people. Sports Card Nation.
Welcome to another stocked and loaded episode of the Sports Card Nation podcast, the show that brings you all the important hobby news, discussions, debates, opinions, info, and interviews with key hobby and sports dignitaries. Also, if you're good, you know we are going to give away something. Now, here's the guy that wanted the cards more than the gum. John Newman.
All right, welcome to episode 142. Glad to be back. A few housekeeping notes. Wanted to pay respects to someone I've gotten very close to over the last year or two. Good man, Texas car dude, Brad Bethune. His father passed away. You may or may not know that. In case you don't, if you want to reach out, say some nice words. Something I dealt with, as some of you may know, I talked about it on the two shows, right? This show and Hobby Quick Hits. Lost my brother June 4th, and you never get over it. You know, the grief subsides to some length and allows you to keep going. But all those people that reached out when that occurred gives you that strength, gives you a little bit of that wind beneath your wings, if you will. I know it's a great Beth Midler song, but there's a lot of truth to it. And, when someone's down, folks, I'm going to sound like a public service announcement here, but it's true. We got to pick them up. And I'm not just talking just hobby things, but life things, right? I know a few other friends of mine in the hobby end, I won't mention names for their privacy, are going through some stuff. I know I've had some private conversations with you, whether it be text or voice. Know this, that I'm thinking of you. I'm here if you need anything, and if there's anything I can do. I'm just 11 digits away, as they say, even though we may not live always close to each other. So help each other out, folks. Life is short, no matter how long it actually is. And, help your fellow man and woman out. And to Brad, during this difficult time, thinking of your buddy. You know this already. If you need anything, I'm here for you. That's what friends are for. We need all of that we can get out there as well. All right. So, episode 142. Another quiet week in the hobby. Nothing happened. Just kidding. But we'll talk about that in the Hobby What's Up segment, obviously. But great guest today. Talking about great people doing great things. My guest this week would fit that description. Beau Thompson, a.k.a. 1 Million Cubs Project. Got to meet him at the National, 4 or 5 weeks ago in person for the first time. Knew him in an online form, obviously at first. And great guy, really down to earth, enjoys the hobby, does it the right way. There is no real wrong way, but still does it the right way. And great advocate and ambassador of the hobby. And finally got him on the show, way overdue. But this week, that not having him on the show streak ends, and happy to talk to him about a lot of things, his new acting career as well. So happy to have Beau on the show. I think you'll enjoy that conversation. Two guys just enjoying the hobby, chit-chatting about who knows what, and having fun. And again, that's what it's about. So we'll keep the intro as short as we can here and get this thing going. Thank you. All right, got a special guest to do the announcement of this week's new release product calendar. He's none other than my buddy Jacob Burris from the Sports Card Second podcast. Jacob, take it away.
Card Nation this week. Let's get right into it. Make sure you guys check out Sports Card Second, available on every single major platform. Alright, on show release day, the 27th, we've got 2020-2021 Leaf Pearl Hockey. On September 1st, we've got 2021 Topps MLS Chrome Soccer. We've got 2020-2021 Upper Deck Skybox Metal Universe Hockey. Also on the 1st, we've got Panini Chronicles Draft Picks Collegiate Basketball 2021-2022. That is definitely going to be one I'm going to check out with the Chronicles. I love Chronicles. Also on the 1st, we've got 2021 Panini Donruss Optic Baseball Hobby. That is definitely a big, huge release of the year. A ton of case breaks will be on that one. Also on the 1st, we've got 2021 Topps 5-Star Baseball. Sweet autographs coming out of that. Sweet hits. We've got on the 3rd, we've got Pokemon Eevee Evolutions 10 case. We've got also on the 3rd, 2021 Leaf Trinity Football. Also on the 3rd, we've got 2021 Panini Black Football. That will definitely be a really nice one. And rounding out your release calendar for the week of the 27th, we've got 2021 Panini WNBA Prism Basketball. Thanks, everybody. Make sure you check out my show, Sports Card Second. Keep collecting! Peace!
Pastime Marketplace has a line of graded card cases that are waterproof, airtight, dust-tight, and hardened to protect and organize your valuable collection. Each of our cases come with pre-cut and pre-formed foam, so you don't have to cut and tear the foam when you get your case. The pre-cut foam inserts are sized to hold PSA, Beckett, SGC, and CGS slabs. Store it all safely and securely with a case from Pastime Marketplace. Check them out at www.pastimemarketplace.com.
It's time for the Hobby What's Up, where we go around the hobby world and tell you all the latest news and breaking stories from the hobby we love.
What's up? What's up? What's up? What's up?
Can get them both. I don't wanna choose, and I make money moves.
Well, Fanatics continues to make money moves. Less than a week after securing the baseball licenses, 2 other shoes has dropped, just like that soundbite says, right? You don't have to choose between 2. Basketball, football, starting in 2026. 20-year license. That is, to me, folks, way too long. I don't even care if Topps got these deals. 20 years is too long to give anybody that kind of contract. And then you're talking about a company that's never been in the card space as a manufacturer before. And 20 years. But money talks. This gives the players in all 3 of these sports a seat at the table, more money. Speaking of money moves. And that's what these are. These are money moves. I don't know, I thought about this. Obviously, I think a lot of us have thought about this. It's been the big news topics of the week and beyond. And, I don't know if the pro players are kind of seeing what's going on with the, NIL on a smaller scale, the name, image, and likeness, and say, hey, let's protect ourselves. And I'm sure that's some of what's going on here. But obviously, this is going to play out over the next 4 to 6 years or 4 to 5 years. There's going to be more to the story, obviously. This is really in the early innings, to use a baseball analogy. We can speculate for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years until either buyouts happen, licensing, sub-licenses happens. Everyone is, myself included, would say, hey, are they going to buy Topps and Panini now and keep those brands and names alive? Topps and Panini don't have to sell themselves if they don't want to. Now, we can debate that, whether what's smart and what's not smart. And who's to say Fanatics just doesn't say, we're not buying you. We spent enough money on these licenses. We're gonna make our own way. We're gonna make new brands and put our own spin on it and our own stamp on it. And we don't want any remnants. And sorry, collectors, as much as you might want to see National Treasures and Heritage and that sort of things that you're kind of in Bowman. We're going to do those things, but we're going to put our own spin on it. They may not be called that, but you'll know what they're modeled after. And so there's so many questions. We can't talk about it every week, but obviously with the basketball and the football license shoe dropping this week, again, more big news, and the effects keep coming. And I've seen people react social media wise, saying I'm getting out of the hobby. This is sort of my exit cue. I've seen other people say, hey, I'm not getting out of the hobby, but I'm just going to buy vintage cards and nothing new. And then I've seen other people just say, I'm not going to buy Fanatics. If they don't keep Topps and Panini brands alive, I'm not going to support them. And again, these are all personal choices. They're up to you. I'm not trying to talk you in or out of anything, but that's the great thing about the hobby is, like the Hobby Quick Hit show I did, Be Your Own CEO. You get to make these purchasing choices, whether you want to or you don't want to, and that's up to you, obviously. More sports card hobby crossing into the mainstream. HBO Real Sports did a 14.5-minute segment on the hobby, mostly centered around the 41st National in Chicago. Some various hobby dignitaries, if you will appear in this segment. It aired already, but you can, on demand it, and they'll replay it. Obviously, it's part of the HBO Real Sports current episodes, so check that out. You'll probably see some familiar faces. In the Don't Cry For Me Argentina department, PWCC didn't waste any time after being booted by eBay, as they did $13 million in auction sales in their August premiere auction on their own site. And so, if you're listening to this on Friday, Monday's Hobby Quick Hits is going to tackle the PWCC eBay episode, if you will, and very opinionated. I'll just leave it at that. Listen to the show. But whatever my opinion is, we have to report facts and ongoings on and leave personal opinions aside. And PWCC just had a very successful week and month, and they're obviously going to survive despite eBay giving them the boot. And again, in fair reporting, have to cover that. PSA is now grading game used bats, and they have 3,055 graded game used bats from 30 different players. And I don't know if they're going to list every graded bat in their registry, but they do now have a game used graded bat registry based on 30 Hall of Fame players that they have graded bats from, including obviously multiples. And so again, one more thing that can be tracked and you can get sort of a pop report on, and that's not a bad thing. So game used bats that are authenticated and graded by PSA.
What doesn't one of one card shop do? From box, case, and personal breaks, there's always fire being pulled. They offer bulk grading subs, and their large store located in Strongsville, Ohio, offers an incredible selection of sports cards, non-sports, and authentic autographed memorabilia. Steve and family will treat you right. Check them out on Instagram at One of One Card Shop or on the web at oneofOneCardShop.com.
Sports Card Nation. It's now time to chop it up with our featured guest on the One of One Card Shop guest line. Let's go!
Happy to have my next guest here on Sports Card Nation. I got to meet him in person here about a month ago in Chicago at the National. He brought his Cubs-o-meter as well, but I've known him. That was the first time we met, but I've gotten to know him in online form, and as do a lot of you can attest to the same. And finally have him on the show here. Probably too long in waiting, but better late than never, as they say. Beau Thompson, 1 Million Cubs Project, welcome.
Hey, John, thanks for having me on.
Oh, man, it's my fault for waiting a little bit too long, but it's funny. The show went from in the early goings when I had to chase people around and threaten them to come on the show to now I sort of like I'm hooked out. But here you are, and that's all that matters. So crazy week in the hobby. But before we get to any of that, I got to ask. Let's start off with the Cubs count as time of recording here.
Well, actually, ironically, I finally, and you talked about the National. We got to meet at the National in person, and I just today, this afternoon, right before we recorded, I brought in the last of the boxes from my car from the National. I've had boxes of Cubs cards in my car for about a month. Finally brought them in, counted another 5,100 Cubs cards, so the count's a little over 665,000 Cubs cards. With probably another 1,000 or 2,000 in mail packages that I've received in the last 2 weeks that I have not even opened yet. So kind of like you, it's like I'm chasing my own tail, just trying to keep up with the incoming mail and counting all these Cubs cards.
Yeah, it's crazy how you do that. I know I asked you what if two cards stick together, right? And the count's not accurate, even once you kind of inventory and get them all in. When and why did this start? I know the story, but for those out there that maybe don't, to kind of share where this started with the first Cubs card to where you are today.
I've always been I've been a Cubs fan since I can remember, since from hearing Harry Carey's voice as a little kid in the mid '80s. And the first Cubs baseball cards that I remember collecting was the 1989 Topps set. The team set, my mom sent in so many UPC codes. It was, one of the cereal brands. And 6 to 8 weeks later, back in those days, you mail in the UPC code. 6 to 8 weeks, you wait, and you finally get your cards. And I opened that set of Cubs cards, and I fell in love with Cubs baseball cards. And throughout my childhood into my teen years, off and on through my 20s, I always kind of collected Cubs cards, and then I'd put them aside. But it seemed like I always gravitated back to Cubs cards. And when I moved to Wisconsin in 2014, I really got back into cards really hardcore, really following the industry a lot. And I started picking up collections, Craigslist. I think it was before Facebook Marketplace, but just online I was trying to find bulk collections. And eventually I acquired about 1 million cards total. A lot of those were the 80s and 90s cards that, aren't worth anything. Nobody wants them. They're, you can't sell them. So what am I going to do with these million cards? And I'm the type of person, I'm a hoarder, as many people may call me, and I can't throw these things away. Even though they're not worth anything and you can't give them away, I just couldn't bear to throw anything away. So in the past, I had done some trade White Sox for Cubs, Cardinals for Cubs. And I thought, hey, I have 1 million Cubs or 1 million cards total. And I always set the Cubs cards aside. Even when I pick up these collections, I sort through them. I always put the Cubs cards in a box, stash them away. What if I just do that and continue doing these team trades? And that's kind of how it all began. Was I have 1 million cards. Let's trade 1 million cards for 1 million Cubs cards. And this started back in December of 2017.
When you started this, did you give yourself sort of a target date? I want to hit this milestone by such and such a time, or not necessarily?
Kind of. I'm very impatient. So, I'm even surprised myself. We're going on 4 years and I'm approaching 700,000 cards. I didn't think that I would get there. I thought, because I've gone off and on with collecting my entire life since I opened my first pack in 1988. And I didn't think I would really stick to it. But all of a sudden, that hook, that number, and as I kept acquiring more cards, it wasn't me chasing down trades anymore. It became, now I'm turning down trades because I just don't have the time to make some of these trades. Most of my collection is really disorganized, so I just can't find cards that people are looking for in trade. So I've kind of got to pick and choose my trades. So early on, I thought, I want to get this done and over with in 5 years. But very early on, within a couple months, I started meeting people in person. One of my first in-person trades was somebody I met on Twitter. He's from Omaha, Nebraska, reaches out. He said, "Hey, I've got a bunch of cards, Cubs cards, and, just a bunch of random stuff. I'm only looking for a few cards. If you have some, rookie cards, prospect cards, in trade, we can do that. I'm driving to Milwaukee for March Madness, and I'm driving right through Madison, Wisconsin, which is where I live." And so we met, at a gas station parking lot. We talked cards for about 30 minutes, and that kind of really kickstarted my love for meeting people in the hobby and sharing each other's stories. And that's kind of what this project has evolved into, is more than just the baseball cards. It's the people, like you say. The hobby is the people, and that's what I've really I caught early on, was just meeting the people and fellow collectors. That's kind of what's driven me, and that's what keeps me going. It's not the cards, it's the people that keep me going to reach this goal.
No, it's true. It's true. I agree with you. I'm biased, but I still agree with you just the same. And so are these all different brands? Are they going to be Tops? Is there going to be, Panini in there? Or is it, how is the diversity of the Cubs collection?
It's everything. It's anything and everything. And I even count, the non-licensed stuff, the Broder cards from the 80s, anything in a Cubs uniform, I count. And then there's kind of a gray area with the now with, because I will, if it says now with Cubs, I'll count that, even if they're in a Braves uniform. I think 89 Tops, Kevin Kaufman says now with Cubs, but he's in a Braves uniform, and vice versa. If they're in a Cubs uniform, but it says now with the, New York Yankees, I'll still count those. Team USA, it's kind of, up in the air. 88 Team USA Ty Griffin I count, because he was the number 1 draft pick for the Cubs. Some of the other ones, like Mickey Morandini, Scott Service, were in that set as well. And I don't really count those. I'll put 1 or 2 aside in the count, but I don't, I'm not going to hoard them like I would a Ty Griffin.
And so you mentioned the Ty Griffin. You correct me if I'm wrong. That's the one you have the most of. If there's a leaderboard of individual Cubs cards, would that top the list?
Ty Griffin, the 89 Tops number 1 draft pick is up there. And going back to that first set that I pulled out, that was the card that really kind of put me over the edge with collecting Cubs cards, because he was a number 1 draft pick. It says Cubs on the card, but he's in a Georgia Tech uniform, his college uniform. And that's kind of my introduction to prospecting and to minor league players. And that's, kind of what started that love affair with minor league baseball. And, I didn't know. I was, 7, 8 years old at the time, so I didn't know how baseball worked. I just figured a good player in high school was signed by the Chicago Cubs, and that's how it worked. I didn't know there was a farm system and all that. So that was kind of my education into professional baseball.
Yep, and I'll ask. Everyone asks collectors, what is your favorite Cubs card out of your collection? I'm going to do the reverse here. Obviously you get cards in bulk of the Cubs variety, and so you don't necessarily know what's in there ahead of time, and then you go through it and do your count, and then see what's in there. It's kind of like a treasure hunt. I mean, is there a particular Cubs card that you're not fond of? Like when you see it, like, it's not your favorite. Is there one that comes to the top of your mind that fits that description?
Well, I'm gonna toss you kind of a curveball with this answer. It's not technically a Cubs card, but it's a card that is often is often mistaken for a Cubs card, and it's one of the triple play, not the 90s version, but the 2000s version, back in like 2012, 2013. Triple play, the stickers, they were cartoonish. Well, Orlando Hudson was a shortstop for the Chicago White Sox, and of course, it's unlicensed, so it just says Chicago on it, and it's kind of a dark blue uniform. So that's often mistaken as a Cubs card. And I even wrote a blog post a couple years ago that I was Hudsoned. So anytime that's in a trade package, I get Hudson, and it happens very often. So every time it's like, oh, here's another Orlando Hudson triple play, goes in the White Sox pile.
Instead of hoodwinked, you were Hudson.
I was Hudson.
Yeah, that's funny. And I mean, what's been the biggest? Probably a few with some of the things you acquire and people give you. Any surprises in going through these boxes? Have you found anything you sort of didn't expect?
Yeah, a couple times. In both stories that I'll share were Mr. Cub, Ernie Banks. One was a package. It came from a trader. I think he's in Oregon, Greg, and we've done several trades. And he sent a medium flat rate box with a bunch of cards and I think a couple magazines. And I tossed the box aside and I almost threw it away. And I noticed there was something in the bottom of it, and I thought it was just something to protect the bottom layer of the box. And I pulled it out because I was just gonna toss it aside, and it was actually like a photo inside. It was an 8x10. It was a signed 8x10 of Ernie Banks. So I'd already reached out and I said, "Hey, Greg, I got the package. Awesome. Thanks so much." And this was days later when I realized, oh, wow, he sent me an Ernie Banks autographed 8x10. This is pretty cool. And then I received a package from Michael in Ohio, and he had read a blog post around the same time his father had passed away. And it was my top 10 most wanted Cubs cards. And the number one most wanted card on the list was, probably the most iconic Cubs card, the Ernie Banks rookie card. So that was number one on my list. Michael's father had passed away. He had a bunch of cards from his father had cards from his childhood, and Michael had them, and one of which was the Ernie Banks rookie card. And he sent like a 2-page letter just kind of talking about, his father and his father's collection, and reading my blog and how it was kind of therapy for him to read the blog and go through his dad's cards. So that was just something where I know we make fun of people when they open something and they open a pack and, oh my God, I'm shaking. It was one of those moments where, it sounds silly when we see other people do it, but it's literally like I was, like, this is, unexpected shock, in the personal attachment. So, forever grateful to Michael in Ohio for that package, and, how deeply personal that card was to him and now to me.
Yeah, no doubt. And like you said so prophetically earlier, the stories, the people behind the cards, and now you have a story along with that card being in your collection now. And it's sort of like the card, I know this sounds corny, but it's sort of like the card gets a second life almost now at your house, and the gentleman's kind of, what you meant to him, and reading those blogs, it was his way to say, hey, thank you. And, it's a win-win when those things happen. And, it's a beautiful story. We hear all the bad stuff a lot of the times, but there's more of that than sometimes gets out there. And kudos to you. You can remember names and what state they're from. I don't even remember what I ate for dinner last night. And so, man, you're sharp as a tack. But And that's awesome. And like you said, there'll be more stories coming down the line. I going to step aside for a quick break to hear from one of our great sponsors, Iron Sports Cards. Right after that, we'll be back with more from Beau Thompson.
Iron Sports Cards is your #1 source for all your PSA and other grading submissions. Their elite status improves turnaround times. Heck, they even provide the card savers. Their chat rooms provide updates on all your submissions. They also offer wax options and single cards to cover all the bases. Check them out on Facebook at Iron Sports Cards Group or on the web at ironsportscards.com, or even give them a call at 1-877-IRON-PSA. Rob's got you covered.
Sports Card Nation is back with Beau Thompson. I know the answer to this question from talking to you in Chicago, but you're obviously at some point going to hit that million Cubs mark, and so what do you do when that happens? What's the plans when that milestone is reached?
That's when the fun kind of comes to a screeching halt, because then I've got to organize it all. My card room, my shelves with all the Cubs cards is just a complete disarray. My buddy Steph from About the Cards and works at ComC, we were messaging back and forth, and he asked me, he goes, "Do you have a 1987 Topps traded Tiffany Greg Maddux?" And I go, "Not that I know of, but maybe." So it's things like that it's like, I go to card shows and I see, especially when it comes to vintage, it's like, even small amounts, $5 or $10 here and there. When you're collecting 1 million cards, it all adds up. So it's like, do I want to spend $10 on this card because I might have it, but I might just recognize it from, looking it up on eBay or just seeing pictures of it and thinking I have it. So it's probably something I should have started a long, long time ago. But I'm just going to wait till I hit 1 million and then buckle down and get things organized, because then my focus turns to not 2 million. That's definitely not an option, but that's when I'm going to, focus on completing some team sets, focus on the pre-war, which I've already kind of begun doing, and still collecting the modern stuff as it releases.
So they're in no semblance of an order at the moment. Like, you don't even have like 80s in monster boxes kind of together at all.
No.
So when this day comes, maybe that's why it's taking you a little bit longer. You almost don't want to get there and start, that is kind of, it's like, man, I'm just kind of, I'm having fun. I'm enjoying the ride. It's a lot of fun. We talked about the card life at the beginning, and when Brandon came over to film, I was like just rushing to get my card room kind of somewhat organized. My Cubs stuff was in kind of my card room has kind of a corner where it's a little cubby hole almost, and that's where all my Cubs stuff was. But it was spilling out into the main room because it couldn't hold all of the Cubs cards on the shelving units back there. So my goal was to get them moved out into the main card room, just for me to access them more easy. But then also for Brandon not to trip on boxes to get some photos and some images of these cards. So I was going through boxes and I'm finding tobacco cards mixed with 88 Topps cards. So it was quite the mess that I was working with. So when you do tackle the task of inventorying these, are they going to stay in boxes? Do you want to keep putting them in bind? Like, how are they going to change the format they're in, or you're just going to have them by year where you can catalog them, or will they actually the visual of them will change as well?
A little bit of both. So I actually started, when I first started the project, I did begin organizing them. And I early on it was taking up way too much time to get them sorted and get them logged into a spreadsheet. And I probably logged 10 to 15,000 right off the bat. And it just took so long that it's like this process is never ending, which is, I guess, a sign of things to come. I only had 50 or 60,000 at that time. And now I'm going to be dealing with $1 million once I try to tackle this again. But I do sort them by player. So I've got several boxes labeled by letter. So I'll sort them by player. I'll try to break them down by team sets. And some of my favorite players will go into binders. So I'll have a player collection run in binders, like the Stars, Chris Bryant, Javi Baez, Rizzo, and of course the classics like Sandberg and Banks, Santo. So a lot of them will be in 4 and 5 row monster boxes, but I'll have player runs that I'll eventually get into binders.
All right, staying on, I got to harp on this subject. So when you hit this mark, everything's sorted, everything's kind of the way you want it to be. Do you see yourself setting another project, whatever it is, even something different? You think, some people do that stuff. It's like, people climb mountains, right? They tackle this mountain, they conquer it, and then they're like, now I want to do this mountain. It's taller, and I don't know if I can do it. I'm going to do it. Do you see yourself, the hobby equivalent of that? Like, hey, I'm gonna, like, you may not even know what it is yet, but do you see yourself picking some other kind of project out and making it a thing you want to do?
Anything is possible at this point. No, I tackled here's the interesting thing. I tackled a similar project, not within the hobby though. 10 years ago, and we talked off the air. I was in broadcasting before I, left the broadcasting side of things, and I was broadcasting play-by-play for high school football, high school basketball, softball, baseball, all the sports. And I love basketball. Basketball was my first love as far as broadcasting. And I broadcasted one year, like 90 games in a season. And I thought it'd be really cool to do 100 games in a season. And so the next, I kind of had this quest to broadcast 100 games, and I broadcasted about 112. So then the next year I decided I'm going to try 150 games in one season. And in a high school season in Illinois, which is where I was at, was 16 weeks. So this was broadcasting about 9 or 10 games per week. So, that's an average over 4 months of 9, I think it was like 9.5 games per week on average over the course of 4 months. And 2 weeks in, I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this. I ended up getting 153 games in that season. There were weekends I'd go to a shootout. I'd do six games in a day. And a few months later is when I made the decision, I'm done with broadcasting. It was like my swan song. And so hopefully once I reach 1 million, it's not my hobby swan song. Hopefully I just stick with it, the organization, and continue collecting and doing my thing. So hopefully it doesn't parallel my previous big project I did.
It's funny hearing you talk about that, Beau. I coach high school football and baseball, and so I'm very familiar with that landscape. And when you mentioned 150 basketball games, knowing that many of the weekday games all start at the same time, I said right to myself, he's got to do multiple games on weekends to hit that number, because during the week they all start 7:30. They're not playing any 10 o'clock games. So it's not like during the week you can hit 2 games potentially, unless you got JV that starts before we all But I said, man, he's hitting up the Saturday slate to get to that number, or the Sunday slate even. But you did it. You hit the 150, and so is that sort of your MO? You sort of set sort of projects for yourself, or things you want to like. Tasks at hand type of thing. Would that describe you?
Kind of. Though that and this are probably the only, the two where people would say that's crazy. Looking back now, I'm almost 40, and looking back to see what I did, when I was in my late 20s, it's crazy. I think we all think that, in our older selves when we look back and self-reflect. But I get some of these harebrained ideas every once in a while. So there's probably going to be another one at some point. Don't tell my wife, but I'll probably think of something down the road.
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, and you got to have fun, whatever you're doing. Yeah, I always say that you got to have fun with it. it makes worth doing, and stories that go along with it, and stuff we can talk about on the podcast to boot. So you mentioned you've gotten into the acting field with your appearance on the Card Life. I watched that. I've watched actually all the episodes that have aired so far. It's a great show. We've had Brandon Rasul on the show. Great guy. Kind of talk about how that all came about, and how that all, like you said, you had to sort of even kind of get organized. And that's the epitome of acting. You had to stage your house. You had to set up the scene. But all joking aside, kind of give folks, how did that all come about?
Kind of came about through Twitter. Brandon reached out to me through the Card Life Twitter account and sent me a DM, and he was going up to film A.J. Dillon of the Green Bay Packers, and said, "Hey, would you be available next week? I think I'm going to be driving through Madison on my way to Green Bay." So we just set it up that way, and so I was able to get a couple weeks lead time to kind of stage my rec room, which is where I'm at here, and then the card room down the hall, and then he kind of set up the rest, and I kind of let him, okay, we're going to film, in this corner. Well, he decided kind of Cubs pieces to put behind me to, kind of set the scene on the sit down. And then I kind of just went through the room, and it was kind of off the cuff. I basically just kind of shared some stories, and some of the questions that he asked, I showed, and I said, "Oh, hey, by the way, I've got a package that came in the mail today. I wanted to save it just in case you could use it for filming." So that's how that scene was set up. And just some of the cards that I had in the card room, like, "Oh, hey, and I have a 1989 Topps, not the same one that I opened up as a kid, but I found one on eBay just to have that nostalgic piece to the collection." So, showed him that, just other pieces to the collection that, that was talked about, and he was able to, see the pieces and put those in post-production.
And little did you know you'd be playing on Major League Baseball stadiums across the country, as he came on the show and said, that's great. And the way he described it, I'm a little older than you, Beau, but you probably remember This Week in Baseball with Mel Allen, right? And that used to play before games on TV. And if you were at the stadium, they played that in the stadium. So I joked with him that this Card Life is sort of the modern day version of This Week in Baseball. It's probably like this month in the hobby. Another quick break to hear from another one of our great sponsors, but we'll be back with more from 1 Million Cubs.
The Sports Card Shop is your small-town local card shop with a global reach. Located in New Buffalo, Michigan, the shop is one of the most accessible in the Midwest. In addition to being an authorized Panini direct dealer, the Sports Card Shop carries all major trading card brands, including Topps, Upper Deck, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and more. With all that new wax, 500,000 singles, and showcases full of graded cards, you're sure to find something great for your collection, whether you're just starting out or a seasoned collector. The Sports Card Shop is your one-stop shop. So call us, come see us, or visit us on the web and social media. Our phone number is 269-469-0140. Website is thesportscardshop@moco.com. The Sports Card Shop is part of the Moco Retail Group, connecting sports, the hobby, and people around the world.
We're back with Beau. The local news here came when the hobby first really boomed. They called me up and they said, "Hey, we know you do a show. We know you do cards. We want to come and film and talk about what's going on in the hobby." And I'm like, "Yeah, we set a time." And I mean, it's amazing that, they were here like 5 hours. I'm not kidding. But the piece that they ran, which I knew was 3-4 minutes, I think about 3 minutes. It wasn't even 4 minutes. And was there a little bit of we see 15, 20 minutes, how much shooting did they actually do
Brandon was probably 3 hours.
Yeah.
It was actually, it was, fairly quick, but yeah, probably 3 hours. And a lot of it was just, we were just kind of talking and, he shared some of the stories like the 90 tops story, of the cards he pulled. And, we were just, it was kind of like, just two guys talking cards for some of it. And so that was what was cool because, Brandon's just like us. And, so having him in charge of a show like that is just, it's great for the, for the hobby audience.
Yeah, and meeting him, basically doing the interview and on screen, just real down to earth. You can tell he's enthusiastic, passionate about what he does, and loves telling people stories, and is into it just the same as viewers might be. He's enjoying the ride as much as what he's producing, and that tells you a lot about a person who's having fun with what they're doing for work. On top of that, so it'll be interesting to watch that show evolve and expand, and they'll keep playing all the old episodes, and so you're still going to get airtime, and maybe some royalty checks will keep coming in the mail. But no, it's well done, and I enjoyed the show in general, but seeing someone like yourself was pretty cool, and to get those stories, that maybe you don't get sometimes on other productions. We get a lot of investment, and this is $1 million, and that's got its place too. I get it, but I like all aspects of the hobby rather than just one, and I think that show does a real good job, kind of showing all facets of the hobby from all different levels. And so again, the big news this week, obviously, I'm going to venture a guess you have more Cubs cards than any other brand. Obviously, they've had the baseball license for the most part for 70 years. We all know the news that broke this week. It's obviously in early stages. A lot of things can develop. Guys like me are going on their shows and speculating and giving all sorts of scenarios. Some we'd like to see, some we're just thinking might happen. And, just kind of your personal thoughts as someone that probably has an affinity. Or I don't want to speak for you. You're right here, but I got to think you sort of have an affinity to Topps and what the brand means to baseball. Yes, I know, probably like you do, they're not. It's not always been peaches and cream, and sometimes they've made mistakes along the way. But sort of how the news hit you when you heard it, your initial kind of thoughts.
It was shock, and I probably yelled out not yelled out, but I probably said some expletives like in disbelief. My buddy Zach tagged me in Darren Rovell's tweet, and that's how I found out about it. It was a tweet, and that Rovell tweet, and it's like, oh wow, this is came out of left field, and I think that's kind of what the consensus was, that it did come out of left field, no pun intended. But Topps is baseball cards. Topps to baseball cards is like apple pie to America. It's just. It's a sad day, but it could be good. And, I know that the, human psychology, we're kind of resistant to change. And we kind of always think the worst when change is about to come. But I think, not all change is bad. Not all change is good. So we have to wait and see. Like you said, it's so early on. There's, nothing has been decided. We still have, a few years. And, I think based on kind of the lineage of the contracts, it kind of varies, but, there's a lot of time, a lot of dominoes can still fall. So I'm just kind of, sitting back and, there's nothing I can do to change it. I love baseball cards, and it doesn't matter if it's Topps, if it's Leaf, Upper Deck, Panini. Sport Flicks, although I don't like Sport Flicks, but I love baseball cards. So I'm going to adapt if we don't have Topps flagship in 5 years or whenever. I'll adapt. I'll still collect. But it's interesting. It's probably the biggest shake up the hobby has seen in a long time. So it'll be interesting. It'll be an interesting story to follow. That's for sure.
Yeah, Beau, I called it on this very show. I said it probably may be the biggest hobby news story. Now, we've had athletes, tragically pass away, Kobe's, the Thurman Munsons, things like that, which are big sports news story. But just on the hobby level, I think this is one of the biggest news stories. I mean, the Twitter was just on fire. The way I found out was I get a lot of, like everything else, when you do searches on your phone, then the phone knows everything you like. And so I get a lot of notifications on my notification screen. And this notification, it's funny. They're usually 1 or 2 lines. And this thing was like 3 or 4 lines with like a smaller picture, Fanatics granted baseball license, end of era for Topps. I like to give proper credit. I forgot who it was published by, but when I saw that notification, obviously I read it, and I said to myself, I'm reading something wrong. I'm you know what I mean? You read stuff quick, and it sounds like one thing, and then it turns out it's something else, and you're like, all right, now it makes more sense. I thought it was one of those deals, like maybe memorabilia or jerseys or something like that, or that even Fanatics was partnering on Topps with something, and so I opened it up, obviously, and read it, and was just like, read it twice, right? Read it again, like I'm missing something here. There's, I skimmed over something, and I read it again, and it really sunk in. I mean, I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I think it is a dramatic thing, like you said. I think just by human nature, we get so accustomed to something in life. I'm old, and Topps was doing baseball cards when I was a kid, and you just and that's the thing, you sort of think that's the way it's always going to be, that's the way it is, and that's the way it's always going to be. And so when that reality kind of gets shook up, it shakes you up a little bit, and I'm like, wow, and then your mind goes in all sorts of different directions. What's going to happen? And then when you're already in content creation, I think your mind even works more like, how do I approach this? What do I think? You put on your speculator's hat. What's the best play for them? You play armchair CEO of Fanatics or Topps. All right, going to step aside for another quick break to hear from our sponsor, Collectible. But after that, we'll be right back with more Beau 1 Million Cubs.
Hey everybody, have you heard about Collectible? It's the one-stop shop where any collector can buy and trade affordable shares in some of the most rare and valuable sports cards and memorabilia in the world, starting from just $5. From 1952 Mickey Mantle PSA 10s and Wilt Chamberlain's iconic rookie uniform to one-of-one Patrick Mahomes RPAs, rare LeBron James logo mats, and everything in between, Collectible is creating never-before-seen access and opportunities for investing in the hobby. Just download the app and sign up with the referral code SCN to get your first share free. Please note this is not a recommendation or solicitation to buy any security. All investment decisions should be undertaken after doing your own research.
We are back with more from Beau Thompson. Stuff is going to slowly come out. It's come out that Topps is claiming that they found out 3 hours before we did, basically, and that they had no idea that the Players Association and Major League Baseball was even courting someone else and negotiating with someone else. And if that is correct, I think that speaks volumes to the disdain that both of those organizations have towards Topps. Why would you do that and not be transparent and negotiate in good faith? I'm not even saying you have to give the contract to Topps, but at least be transparent. Say, hey, we're opening this up past 2025 and 2023, these 2 licenses, and we're going to talk to other people, and the fact that they didn't, again, assuming that is true, I think that's sort of telling as well. And again, stuff's going to trickle out. I think we're in the early stages of a long story, like you said, where Topps can do baseball cards until 2025, and Fanatics in whatever form they're going to do can do kind of what Panini does now with baseball, starting in 2024. If I got my years right, and it's one of those, I called it just a hobby landscape nuclear bomb. It's just been dropped, and when the mushroom cloud disappears, it's going to be a different landscape. There's going to be different things that we're going to have to, like you say, adapt to, and like it or not. I've seen some people, Beau, say, I'm leaving the hobby. I'm only do Topps cards. I'm not buying Fanatics. And again, it's early stages. The selfish person in me and the old man on the porch in me kind of wants to see Fanatics maybe purchase Topps, right? Or the brand names, and keep those names alive. And now we've seen they've got the basketball. This is now went over to the basketball side of the house, and rumors are that the same thing is going to occur in football as well. And so again, this is a huge event, but like you said, I love the hobby too. It's not going to force me out. We'll adapt. If we, it's really kind of now, right? If we like something, we buy it. If we don't like something, we don't buy it. That's always going to be constant. And so we're not forced to buy anything we don't want to. And there's going to be things, it's funny when the Project 2020 came out, I said, I'm not going to buy any of that. Not my thing. And I wound up buying, quite a bit, especially early on. And Jackie had to put Jackie Robinson in that thing. So they got me just on that alone. So that's the beauty, is we have choices, right? We're not forced to purchase anything that doesn't do it for us. And if something hits us the right way, we can buy it if it's something we can afford and want. And so it might be different, but again, we got a long ways to go. Who knows what's going to happen here? And I think, let's be real, it's going to be interesting to see what develops over the course of the next 3 to 5 years with these developments.
Absolutely. And you kind of touched on the selfish side of me thinks, the opportunity, what if, this creates, a Fanatics overtaking, buying Topps, Panini, or what if there's a sub-license to where Fanatics is still the exclusive, but they can, sub-license to Topps and Panini, and you have, some of the Panini products I absolutely love, and I wish there were logos on them. Just the selfish side. Could that happen? Could there be a Topps Chrome basketball? How cool would that be? So that's I think we all have kind of optimistic thoughts of what this could be, and I know there's a lot of us have pessimistic thoughts of what this could turn into. So we'll let it shake out and see how the dust settles.
Yeah, no, and like you said, I think there could be some positives that come from it too. We gotta kind of go in with an open mind. Some of the things that I'm getting a little soft in my old age, Beau, and so one of the things I think about when stuff like this happens, there's that human element to it, that some folks may lose their employment, be forced to find a new place to work, and that doesn't get lost on me, and that's how my mind sort of works too, and so I feel bad. I mean, for that aspect, if that's what winds up happening, but they're mentally talented people too that are going to obviously land on their feet, maybe with a different polo shirt that their brand they're wearing, but it could be exciting too. I'm going to go into, I think once that initial shock wears off, I think it's like you get hit with a left hook you never saw coming. And you stagger, you daze, you lean against the ropes, you get that standing 8 count, and then you kind of shake off the cobwebs, and then you're like, okay, let's get back in there and see what happens. I think I use that sort of analogy. I think we got caught with the hook, and it sent us reeling, and now we're kind of, shook off the cobwebs and got our wits about us, and just now I think we're all curious to see where this story goes and all the twists and turns, and I think they're going to be some for sure. This is not going to be something boring that nothing interesting happens after this. I'd be shocked if it just stays sort of status quo, and it's going to be interesting to see. And I think we'll both, God willing, we'll both still be doing cards, maybe in a different form or different brands, but it's still baseball cards, and we still can have fun with them. So, Beau, I want to thank you for coming on. I always give the guests kind of the final say, give out where people can see what you're doing, any websites, the blog, anything you want to promote.
1millioncubs.com is the blog, and that's kind of the 1 Million Cubs Central. You can find all my socials on there. 1 Million Cubs is kind of my social media. Instagram is 1 Million Cubs, Twitter at 1 Million Cubs, 1 Million Cubs Project on Facebook, 1 Million Cubs Project at gmail.com is the email. And again, all of that can be found at 1millioncubs.com.
And quit sending them Orlando Hudson triple play cards. For the love of Orlando Hudson, and enough already. But all joking aside, pretty much it's like Sports Card Nation podcast. If you Google 1 Million Cubs, all that stuff, I'm sure it's going to come up right on that first or first couple pages. Not hard to find them. Awesome stuff. I'm going to try to talk you into doing a 1 Million Mets project. I can help you with that if that does come to fruition. But awesome stuff, man. You're great. A great part of the hobby. Happy to have you on today.
Thank you, John. Thanks for having me. It was awesome meeting you and the rest of the guys from Hobby Hotline at the National. And thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, that was great. And I posted the picture. Beau was in the audience, and he changed his Cubs cardometer to say Hobby Hotline #1 fan. I cracked up on stage. I broke character. I don't care. It was great. And, it's fun. You have fun, and that's, what are we in the hobby for, right? Have a good time, have some fun. You do it. I try to do it. And that's what it's all about. So thanks again, man.
We love our listeners. Without you, there is no us. We care about your opinions and feedback and invite you to reach out to us on any of our social media accounts. On Instagram at Sports Card Nation Podcast, Twitter at SportsCardNati1, or email the show at sportscardnationpc@gmail.com. We don't ask for much, but if you really like the show, give us a shout out. Tell your friends or give us a follow on our social medias. If you enjoy the show, please give us a positive review on iTunes or any of the platforms you are listening on. Thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for another edition of Sports Card Nation Podcast. Want to thank you out there, to the listeners, the people who download the show, wherever you're listening to it, in a car, on a subway, on a bus, in your den, on your TV, through Alexa, wherever, it doesn't matter. You've given your time, and I appreciate that. It means the world to me as we approach our third-year anniversary. Just where did the time go, and where has the show went from what it started as to now. And try not to take that for granted at all, and I don't. And I just want to, as I always do, say I appreciate it and thank you. Thank you to my guest, Beau Thompson, today. Again, one of the many great people we have in the hobby, and try to highlight that as much as we can, and having him on today as an example of, hobby your way, right? Whatever way you want to do it, whatever provides you the enjoyment, the outlet. There is no real wrong way short of being a bad person and ripping people off and that sort of thing. And whether it's Cubs or another team or however you collect, like we talked about, you can change your mind at any time as well. That's the beauty of the hobby. And Beau's having a lot of fun, and as he approaches that million card mark, and as you heard us talk about sorting, sort of a task he's not really that excited to do, but that's what happens, right? But I want to say thanks to Beau for coming on. Guys, I just want to, and girls, I just want to close with this again, kind of way I open it, right? It's tough times for some, right? It's not always, things may be going for you or me, but there's other people who aren't maybe in that same positive, good place, and things can change, and we can be sort of a wind of change, a positive impact, right? Reach out, make a phone call, a text, lift someone up, offer to help them, without offering, do things, right, uncalled for, and it feels good for you, it's good for your own soul, and it can go a long way, and it can make such a difference in someone's mindset and mental health if you can be there for them. I can't stress this enough. I know there's some of you out there right now, honestly, probably saying, "Hey, man, I tune in to your hobby, a card podcast, a sports card podcast, right?" I hear you, but this is important just the same, and so it's only a couple minutes, and it's worth it. Even if I make a few of you mad, I apologize, but it's very important to get that message out there. Help your brother, your fellow men and women. Help people out. It goes a long way, and you never truly know the impact of that. And if you're doing it, keep doing it. If you're not doing it, it's not too late to start and do that kind of thing. So, folks, everyone out there, thank you. As always, we'll see you in 7 days. And good quote to end on, right? The hobby is the people. We'll see you next week.